Hi, I'm Bob Moss. I'm a professional theater director. The directing program here is new and it's exciting, and I've been involved with it from its inception. I started teaching it because I thought that it would be valuable for playwrights to have some knowledge, some hands-on working knowledge of how a director thinks and how a director approaches a text and how a director approaches rehearsal and working with actors. I thought this would be very valuable for playwrights. I've always thought that. So I taught it, and then we decided, you know what, directors need the same training working with playwrights because it is a new ball game. It's a different ball game. If you were directing a Shakespeare play, Shakespeare's not around, and you can do whatever you want, and you also don't have the help of a playwright. When the playwright is there, you can always turn to the playwright and say, hey, I don't understand this moment, or I think this isn't working, and how do you finesse that conversation? We deal with some basic considerations that cover everything. We talk about story, we talk about theme, we talk about character, we talk about intention, and we talk about space. And by space, I say, you know, where does the sofa go? And how does the sofa tell the story? These are really practical constructs that can be applied and will help you solve any problem that you come up with. It'll give you a doorway into solving problems. Go through the conception of the play, designing the play, the poster for the play, all different ways of describing and circling the work on a new play, bringing it to fruition, bringing it to a place where it functions in front of an audience. So on a given Friday night, we all gather, the playwrights, the actors, the directors, local actors who contribute, who volunteer, and the playwright picks out of a hat a list of elements that have to be in their new play. They also pick out of another hat the name of the guy who'll direct it. Out of another hat, they pick the 4 actors they're going to actually use. Then, this is like 8 o'clock on a Friday night. The playwrights then go away, and at 8 o'clock the next morning, they will have written a 10-minute play. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, they sit down with their director, and they spend a couple of hours, I would say, doing rewrites. Because sometimes there are things that want to be, because they've written it in a rush, obviously in the middle of the night, and sometimes there are questions. The first one I directed, Samantha Mocker, she had written 2 different plays. It was 5 minutes with one play. She didn't realize it. She thought it was all one play, but after 5 minutes, the play veered and became something else. So I said that to her very kindly and sweetly, and she said, oh God, you're right. So she had to do like a big rewrite, and we worked on it together. I wasn't writing it, I was just being the Jiminy Cricket on her shoulder. Then at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, the actors join us, and we start rehearsing this 10-minute play. And the playwright is sitting there, and questions come up from the actor. Why am I saying this line? This time doesn't feel right. The playwright says, yes, it is, or, oh my God, you're absolutely right. The playwright is doing rewrites. And then at 8 o'clock that night, we perform them. So that's why it's called Overnight Sensations. It's sensational, and it is so much fun, but it is also encapsulating the whole process of working with a playwright and working on new plays in one 24-hour period. It's intense, it's hilarious, it's painful, it's agonizing, it's wonderful. This is a terrific program for a young director because it's intense, but Ben Brantley of the New York Times isn't coming to see your work. You're in a very protected environment where you can begin to feel your way into this incredibly difficult, delicate, and miraculous relationship, the director and the playwright. Edward Albee, who I worked for in the early years of my career, described the relationship as the lover and the beloved. And he said the playwright is the beloved and the director is the lover. And I learned that lesson early on, that it's the lover's responsibility to bring gifts, to take care of, to see to tend to love, and to embrace the playwright. And the playwright is there to receive all of this with open arms, hopefully. And the main lesson I learned from Edward was if the director has questions, the director can ask them, the playwright doesn't have to answer. And when he said that to me, I totally understood that. It was a brilliant learning lesson for me, and I've tried to teach it to my directing students. So what it does is, because you know the playwright doesn't have to answer, it teaches you to be really thoughtful when you are asking the playwright questions or asking for rewrites or whatever. And I have gotten rewrites from some pretty tough playwrights over the years because I know how to ask the questions. So these are good things that one can learn, and I'm happy to share them.